I'd say the thing that has been the biggest hit and that people tend to use the most is our whiteboarding, flipcharting. So it's instead of just showing slides, is there a different way to engage your audience?
Welcome to the Emblazers Show, where B2B leaders are igniting revenue. I'm your host, Abby Kerr. And on today's episode, we're featuring a fireside chat conversation with IBM's revenue enablement leader, Ann Lake. This was originally recorded as a live fireside chat at our next Revenue Summit 2026 in conversation with Tim Riesterer. You'll hear Ann and Tim talk about IBM's shift from what to sell to how to sell, moving a massive product-centric sales force toward truly value-based conversations, and pulls back the curtain on how IBM is building value selling skills in technical sellers, from why change, why us messaging to live whiteboarding and storytelling. But first, let's learn a little bit more about Ann Lake. Ann is a revenue enablement leader at IBM, where she leads a global function supporting more than 20,000 sellers. Ann brings a deep background in HR, talent development, and professional growth, which she now applies to understanding the buyer experience and helping sellers become more value-centric and effective. She spent her career turning ideas into action, building ecosystems, programs, and analytics that develop expertise, drive behavior change, and align people with business strategy. Let's go to the episode right now.
Ann Lake, who's the head of global enablement for IBM, is with us today. I don't think IBM needs any introduction. I mean, I said it earlier that it's just one of the most durable and clearly always evolving companies to continue to be so relevant at such a size for so long. There are some stalwarts from back in the Good to Great days. For those who haven't read that book, that was a long time ago. They just don't exist anymore, or they were sold for piece parts. IBM continues to be a juggernaut, and I don't think that's an accident. And back when I first started in sales, everyone was like, you got to sell like IBM. You got to sell like IBM. And back in the day, that meant a blue suit, a white shirt, and a blue tie. That's what that meant. And you're in charge of enablement now at this company and making sure that the sellers keep up with the goodness that the product has to offer and keep customers engaged. I don't want to say it's easy, but if your sellers call and say, I'm with IBM, are they automatically in the door? Or do you find that like the competitive landscape is getting, and even the new markets you're trying to penetrate there, it's getting more competitive and you're going places people don't know you. Is that true for IBM?
Yes and no. For a lot of clients, they know who we are. We've been around over 100 years. So they may not have heard from us in a while, or they may not be a client at the moment, but we are a known quantity. That doesn't always mean, a guaranteed entry. We still have to earn our right to have those conversations with clients. I would say in, more emerging markets and smaller clients, maybe we even have to start back at the beginning. Who are we and what do we do? Because there's still a misconception out there that we are the company that builds PC and point of sales machines and printers, and we are not in that business any longer. So sometimes we have to spend a bit of time reintroducing ourselves to clients who may not have worked with us in a long time.
Well, as you go down
it all
market,
starts with earning the right to the conversation.
Right. And even as you go down market, maybe they're like, we're too small for you.
Yes.
The reality is you have to convince them that you can serve everybody.
Yes.
All right. The promise that we made to everybody is that we're going to chat about the transition the company's making from more of a traditional product-centric conversation to a new value conversation. Yep. If I had $1 for every company who says we're too product-centric, we got to be customer-centric, we can't sell products, we got to sell value, I might not be doing this webcast today. So that's why I think it's a great topic, because everybody says it, and that hasn't changed. So we're still struggling. Some reason we're still struggling. It's hard to, I'm guessing at IBM, because it just is product-centric, because you've been built on the back of such great products. That's just inertia for you guys.
Yes. And, the product centricity is even reflected in our enablement organization. There's actually two parts to enablement. there's more. It's more complicated than just two parts, but there's a team in enablement that delivers product enablement. So teach the sellers the functions and features of a product so they can show the client the functions and features of the product. I lead the part of enablement that focuses on that's the what to sell. If you think about it that way, I focus on the part of enablement that's the how to sell. So it's nice that we have all these amazing products with fabulous functions and features, but what's the so what? And that's for a long time, we had been focused on the what to sell. And over the last few years, that's where our emphasis has been. And it was right. In order for you to bring any unique insights to a client or open the door, you have to understand the value that what our products do and why they do what they do. So you have to understand that in order to then have that conversation about, and why should you care? And that's where my team enters the why should you care. We've been doing a lot over this last year on the why should you care in partnership with CBI. I'm relatively new to the role. I just celebrated my 1-year anniversary in enablement. I come from a long HR background focusing on kind of the same thing, careers and skills and talent and ensuring that people understand the skills that were needed to grow and what they needed to do to be successful. So it wasn't a huge leap into enablement, and really excited to be leading this early stage, where we are in this early stage of our journey on value selling.
Let's talk about that. First, I just like that sort of, like you said, it's more complex than two, but it's easy to understand.
Yeah.
You have to have product knowledge because you have a big portfolio, a growing portfolio, a modern portfolio, and people have to understand what it is and how it works together. Got it. Makes sense. And I love the idea that there's then a complementary enablement organization that says, great, now you have to make a difference in your conversations. You need to show up in a way that is as unique as your solutions and is compelling to the customer. When did the company decide we might need a little more of that? Like, what signs were there? Were there any KPIs you measured? What said, we might have to nudge that pendulum back in that direction a little bit more?
There wasn't any single aha moment, and there wasn't anything you could look at in our CRM and say deals are getting stalled here or here or here because our sellers don't know how to talk about the why. It was more anecdotal feedback, and it was a quiet storm that was building under the surface that led some leaders to the conclusion that we've done really well on the product enablement. I feel like our sellers get it, and now we need to bring more balance. So it wasn't about a substitute. It was about, an either or. It was about we need to lift all boats. Got it in the product, need to enable product sellers to talk about the why better. And we just had some leaders who felt really strongly that this was a gap.
So sales leaders asking for, so it wasn't enablement down. It wasn't even top down in the organization. It kind of bubbled up from the field. So it was like, whoa, yes, but what about?
Yeah, we in enablement, we'd like to say, well, we always knew it was important. And we always had, pieces here and there to enable sellers to have those why conversations. And we'd been doing some work, but it was only once we got the boost from the leadership team that we were like, yes, now we can go do all the things we imagined because we've got sponsorship.
Yeah, sponsorship from the team that you're going to bring this to. So again, it's anecdotal feedback that you got, but do you sense that they were feeling any particular pressure or pain that they could put their finger on? And you're like, yes, we don't want to just bring this enablement. We want to solve for that thing you're feeling. Was there a sense that deals were getting stuck? Was there a sense that, because, it's not like the customer doesn't have enough product information, but yet decisions, deals, win rates.
I think it's fair to say we were hearing from customers as well that our products are good and we're rightly very proud of them, but we're not the only ones out in the marketplace. And in order to differentiate ourselves from our competitors, we needed to bring better messaging about the why. Why, what makes yours better, IBM? And we were struggling to connect it to business impact. We were struggling to help buyers understand, how our technology can improve their business outcomes and help them justify it internally. one exec at a client may love us, but may have a hard time making a pitch to their peers. So how can we help them convey the why to their peers? Because they're not going to go sell it to their peers based on functions and features. They're going to sell it to their peers internally based on the impact it can bring them and help all of them achieve their business outcomes.
So I love that. You gave us two vectors to think about that. Hey, a lot of people are starting to look the same out here. Your sellers probably felt it and your customers were saying it. So please help us differentiate. Give us something to understand why we should choose you.
Yes.
And help me get others on the same page.
On board.
So justifying you, but then the other vector you said was business impact. So I'm going to call that the justify it. Justify you and then justify this decision in general. And so, yeah, justification, I think, is a great word here that through differentiation and business impact, justify you, justify it is a different conversation than product. And I think, yeah, as two jumping off points for impact and then trying to figure out now, how do we help you with the justify IBM to everybody and justify the decision to those who make decisions? You embarked on a program to help people articulate value in those ways. So talk to me about how you started that. Like we just heard from Ashton that pilots were big for her. How did you start to bring the why around differentiation and business impact, justifying you, justifying it? How did you start bringing that online and start to get people involved?
Yeah. So I mentioned I took this role about a year ago, and this was already really bubbling, this need for value-oriented discussions. And we had a senior exec who led our worldwide technical sales community. And he was one of the people who felt the most strongly, anecdotally, and through observation as well, that our technical sellers in particular didn't know how to have that value conversation. And they leaned too much on their sales colleagues to have that conversation. But that seller, non-technical seller, wasn't always in the room. And the technical seller this was his point of view. The technical seller needed to also be able to have that value-oriented discussions that moves beyond functions and features. So even before I joined, he'd been pushing the team for a solution. How are you going to help me solve this? How are you going to help me solve this? We need to do something. So we quickly put together a workshop as a pilot. We had already been working with CDI, so we had the value messaging content. And we also had some content that was homegrown on sales presentation skills and on storytelling and on visual communications, whiteboarding, telling a story through flip charts, through different mechanisms to grab people's attention. So we put together a 2-day workshop that we delivered in May of last year. And we had 3 pilots planned about 2 weeks apart, which quickly turned into a 4th and then into a 5th because it was such a hit and people were asking for it. And so we moved from pilot to BAU without pause. We've learned from that. It was fantastic. We iterated as we went along, but we didn't have a moment to pause to say, okay, let's catch our breath. What would we do differently if we were to do this again? What would we tweak about the workshop? We tweaked real time as we were moving along. So we went from 5 pilots in May and June to, a rollout in EMEA of the same workshop across multiple markets. We still called them pilots because we were testing it in new markets where reception could be different. The ways of working are in Japan versus Italy versus Brazil, quite different. So we took the opportunity to test how the messaging landed in different ways of working. But we rolled right into BAU and have developed different versions of that workshop as we have moved along. One of the other things that we've done is we think of value from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective. The value messaging is the qualitative. Not entirely, but a lot. We also are even earlier in our journey on the quantitative. How to help sellers have a financially driven discussion about the impact. Not just, you could talk about business metrics in a qualitative way, but really, what is it going to come down to? especially if you're some of our bigger transformational deals. So we are just beginning to thread together value messaging plus, how do you talk about a business case supported by value value messaging? So the qualitative and the quantitative.
Yeah, I want to dig into that a little bit more. So let's just unpack qualitative a little bit
Yeah.
more, and then we'll jump into quantitative because I'm
Yeah.
getting some questions about it. Like the idea of differentiating, because there's a lot of perceived commoditization. Somebody asked, well, that's great. Why choose IBM over everybody else? But somebody, and God bless them, said, but what about helping somebody see the need to change in the first place and planting that seed? And well, I say God bless them because that's where we live, right? So maybe just walk through the construct of this course, this experience. It's a live in-person experience. It's 2 days, and you constructed an agenda. And what'd you guys call it again? You gave it a name.
Deliver with impact.
Deliver with impact. So the value messaging course at IBM is called Deliver with Impact, and it's got sort of a choreography to it.
It does.
Storytelling is a part. And so maybe just walk us through at a high level the agenda.
Yep. I'm not going to get all the modules in exactly the right order.
No, that's okay.
It is the Create Value Workshop. A lot of it is based on the Create Value Workshop from CVI. So DIQ and the triple metric. And I meant to mention before, one of the game changers in the pilot was when we talked about the status quo. And the percent of time, I think it's 40%, that a client decides to stick with the status quo. That was a game changer in people's minds. Like, if all the things they walked away with from the workshop, it was the disrupting of the status quo. What a high bar that is. And if you know that, what would you do differently? Because you're not, as you say, and we now say in the workshops, we're not just competing with our competitors, we're competing with the way they've always done things, and the cost of change and the fear of change. So in the workshop, of course, that's a part of the workshop. So it's about probably 3/4 of a day of the value messaging content from CVI. And then the storytelling, we have a whole storytelling module. We abbreviate it about, because clients buy from people they know and trust. So how do you use storytelling as a way to build that trust and to get to know the client on a more personal level? And of course, in tune with the level of comfort that you perceive from the client. I know every personality is different, but storytelling is a good way to get to know them and for them to get to know you. We dabble a little bit of sales presentation skills in throughout that, in terms of way to grab people's attention and so on. But I'd say the thing that has been the biggest hit and that people tend to use the most is our whiteboarding, flipcharting. So it's, instead of just showing slides, is there a different way to engage your audience? One of our facilitators came to us already when he joined us with homegrown content. There's a fantastic module on telling a story through flip charts. So teaching them that you too can draw. And it's not just the CBI, untroubled waters and that, but also people and clouds and trees and birds and all the different ways you can engage people when you stand up at a flip chart and draw.
I have to say that we work with lots of companies. You and everyone on this agenda today are our favorites. No offense to anybody else. You're all our favorites.
No, you say that to everybody.
Yeah, right. And so, but I've never seen a company so invested in whiteboarding. Whiteboarding seems to be an accident at most companies. So we have data in the industry that says that only 4% of sellers, from the vast number of sellers that we talk to, actively and regularly use whiteboarding, whether it's whiteboards or flip charts, like you said. Basically simple concrete imagery that you draw dynamically in the room as part of the interaction. And 96% use PowerPoint. And if one of the main things you just said is we got to be different, we got to show up different, we got to be different, like literally the experience you create just needs to be different. We literally have evidence and research that shows if the same exact pitch is made with PowerPoint and whiteboard, you are not only seen as different, the whiteboarder, but they also perceive the product to be better. And what they heard was the exact same set of capabilities and functions. Exactly.
I would love that research.
Yeah. And so you guys, you don't need to know it. You guys have embraced it. And I've just been, you're a big company, and causing people to take on such a sort of distinctively different skill set is a big deal. So just talk to me about how this is moving then beyond pilot. So you're talking about a better value message, and a chunk of that you mentioned, that's how to convince the customer to leave their status quo. The other is, why is IBM different? And then the third is, how do you tell that story in a different way? Whiteboarding. So I think I got the three parts of that: deliver with impact. So now how's that? We'll come back to quantitative. I want to come back to quantitative, but talk to me about how this is now sort of rolling out more broadly, and about adoption and impact. Are you seeing things change?
Yeah. So we're doing a few things to expand our impact. One is we've developed different versions of workshops. And one of them is based on an SVP's ask. He had developed a point of view that our sellers needed to be better at telling a technical architecture story. And so we pitched a workshop that was started with value messaging, because if you're going to go talk about architectures and why you might want to change something, you have to talk about the why, and whiteboarding. So it is a day of value messaging and whiteboarding. And then the next 2 days are on technical content where there are no slides, none. The facilitators use no slides, where they talk about different aspects of a client's architecture based on our technical suite of products. And the facilitators whiteboard for 2 days. They use an iPad. Most of them use an iPad that they project onto the screen using a variety of different tools. And some of them use flip charts, which is fine. What we want participants to walk away with is the confidence that if they're in a room with a client, they can grab a marker, go up to the whiteboard, and help the client envision how something could be done differently. And then maybe the client takes the pen from them and they do it together, but the client leaves. They could take a picture of the whiteboard when they leave and show it to their peers at their next leadership meeting or whatever. What we also believe is that, and have found, is that the practice of drawing it helps you remember it more. The seller, right? As they're drawing it, they are, at the end, they have a capstone project where they have to tell a client's architecture story, deliver value messaging, and draw at the same time. It's really hard. So they spend a lot, and they're developing that pitch throughout the 3 days of the workshop, but it's really hard. And at our pilot, there were people that were non-native English speakers trying to do it in English. So add that as an added challenge. Kudos to them for knocking it out of the park. But the bringing it all together, and even in those technically oriented classes, when they deliver the why change, the why IBM, they often start with go back to the status quo. They often start there, which we love to see, because it cements to us that is an aha moment for them that's sticking, and helps them have that conversation with their clients in a different way that they might not have otherwise.
What if your next big revenue move didn't come from a blog post or a cold LinkedIn scroll, but from a real conversation with leaders who've been there?
As the world of sales is constantly evolving and constantly changing, I think it's even more critical to get together with people to understand how are they helping to solve some of the problems that our buyers have today.
Meet Emblaze, a community of sharp B2B minds, CROs, CSOs, rising stars, sharing what's actually working in sales, enablement, and customer growth.
We always find a lot of value in the partnerships that we're able to form with some of the other great organizations that are part of the team here. And personally, I love the opportunity to connect with my peer group outside at other organizations and learn from them, and try to figure out if there's things that they're doing that we can pull into our organization and benefit from.
Join a monthly forum, dig into science-backed strategy, and get insight you won't find in your feed. Start your Emblaze journey today at emblazegrowth.com.
It's so funny in an era of all things AI. And of course, we've all been prolific PowerPointers, that the next seminar, the next summit that we're leading right now says the next big thing is whiteboarding. But I think when we talk about like the fact that they're craving human interactions in the most complex selling moments, that what they're really craving is clarity. And the person who comes in and doesn't just add to the confusion by piling more slides on and piling more information on, but actually coalesces all of that into a fit of clarity that people could draw along, and then they could draw and tell others. That's a moment, and that's a distinctive moment that, again, if we're looking to set ourselves apart in our human interactions, this is an underutilized skill set.
Yes. And I think one of the not the objective, but one of the impacts of using a whiteboard rather than PowerPoint is when you're doing a PowerPoint, you have an unlimited number of slides. You can create an unlimited number of little boxes with words in them, and it can connect an unlimited number of variables, right? And we all know how overwhelming that can be to be on the receiving end of that. When you're drawing it, it's not unlimited. Especially if you're talking at the same time, you can only draw what you're talking to, and then you have to stop, and you have to fill it in with words about value.
Which shows that you have command of, like, you own that story. Difference between a PowerPoint jockey and a consultative seller is I understand and can draw simple, concrete images of my story.
Yep. And in that workshop, we spend an hour of the workshop talking about the ways you can whiteboard, because many sellers don't have the luxury of being in person with clients. So there are different ways to whiteboard. Teams has a whiteboard functionality. Teams has functionality where if you have a flip chart right here, you can make the camera train in on the flip chart rather than you, and you kind of look like a ghost off to the side. You can use your iPad. There are a variety of ways you can deliver it virtually. And sellers have been spending time getting confident in those ways as well, but still drawing. And then I'll add one more thing. What we have found what we have seen a few of them do is prepare like a shell of a whiteboard in advance. Like, here are the boxes I'm going to fill in for you while we're talking, right? Create the diagram and then fill in the color and the context through the discussion.
Awesome. If we're going to ask people to practice, let's practice some things that are going to make them different. Yep. So it's the value message, and then it's the way you tell the story.
Yes.
Now let's talk about quantitative. You've disrupted status quo. You've started to lean people in your direction. The whole experience has felt different. But as we talk about, like, there's still a part of the brain that needs the rational, logical explanation. And so quantitative, you guys are embarking on, in addition to value messaging, really business value creation. I think you probably gave it a name, but a team, a technology, and you're marrying the qualitative and the quantitative. Tell us about, because I've met this team and we've been sharing insights, but tell us about what you guys are doing to roll out I'll call it a sister skill, which is the business value calculation.
Yeah. So in the Americas in particular, the Americas GM wanted to drive some behaviors around creating business value assessments, business case, value propositions. And they created a value engineering team in the Americas and invested in a tool that will be global. They're not part of our team. It's a team that reports to the business, driven by the business. And have invested in a tool to enable sellers to create a business case based on our solution. So you plug a few things in, clients, data about the client, data about our products, and it spits out, and other stuff, and it spits out a business case. Where we come in is you still need to be able to talk to those financials. It's great that tool spit that out for you, or it's great that you went to Copilot and got it, or it's great that you went to Finlistics and got data, but you still need to be able to talk to it. And that's where the blend of financial insights and value messaging comes in. So in the Americas entry-level hire training program, we did completely blend they have a part of that program is a week in person. And we deliver 2 days that is a complete blend of value messaging and a compelling reason to act driven on dollars, and a unique value proposition driven on dollars. So sellers go away and practice building a business case gathering data from various tools, Copilot, Finlistics, this other tool, to create a business case or a value proposition for one of their clients. And then they practice delivering that with the value messaging, the why change, the why IBM. Really starts with the why change. How can we convince a client to change given this financials I'm about to show you?
Yeah, so I love that combo. We teach this idea that the brain is made up of two decision-making parts. One's emotional and intuitive. That's where change happens. The other's rational and logical. That's where the quantitative validation, explanation, justification happens. And you have to satisfy both. So a value seller, a lesser product, more value seller, has to be able to tell a great value story and then bring in the evidence, the data, the empirical insights to help put somebody over the edge, right? So you're working both.
And the extent to which they need to do that varies based on the size of the deal. For example, a huge transformational deal, you're way in the weeds on that. A smaller deal with a client, for a smaller client we haven't worked with before, it may just be a light touch business case. But either way, they need to know how to pull it together in a standardized way, supported by data.
So let's talk about how it's going. You've got these two moving parts. Is it becoming a more part of the DNA? Is the product and the value conversation starting to even out? How are you measuring it? What are you seeing?
I would say we're far from institutionalizing it yet. We are just a year into the journey. Our first pilot was early May of last year. And we've now got 2 or 3 versions of this workshop. We've integrated it into other things like the America's entry-level hire training, into online enablement about our product. So we've infused value messaging into product enablement. So when a seller takes, a level 1 course on one of our products, in addition to all the functions and features, there's some high level, why should you care? Why would a client want this? And for all of that, we use the why change, why IBM shorthand. We have found that really sticks. So we don't even say value messaging. We don't say CVI. We say shorthand to everyone. Oh, you mean why change, why IBM? That's what you want. Yes, that's what I want. So it's become shorthand. And people have become very familiar with that, even if they don't know what they're asking for. Just, I hear that I need to do this. Yes, you do. So we're infusing it everywhere that we can. We are, so far, the vast majority of our delivery, 95% of our delivery, has been in-person workshops, which I think is a reflection of the content and also how hungry people have been for in-person delivery. We just haven't done a lot of that over the last few years. So we can't take credit for all of the hunger. Some of it is they just like to get together, but that won't keep up forever. So we are also working on launching the new curriculum from Corporate Visions and bundling that for sellers in a way that's consumable and gamifying. Go take these 3 classes, go take those 2 classes and get a badge or whatever. And we are also working to modularize the workshop so that they can be delivered virtually. And not just a recorded head on a screen in the privacy of your home office, but in a structured way where maybe the participants are one place and the instructor is somewhere else, with a host in the room facilitating the exercises. I've got someone in Ottawa begging for a facilitator to come. We don't have capacity because we can't keep up with demand. So we've offered to them, what if we did it virtually instead? We're having to win them over on that because they really want someone in person, but we will. So I'd say launching the digital curriculum, so in-person workshop is not the only way to get information about value messaging. Integrating value messaging everywhere and using different virtual formats to deliver a live workshop are the 3 big ways that we are scaling. But still not, I wouldn't say it's still institutional. I say there are still leaders we need to win over. And that's probably a constant journey. We are a technical company at heart, and it still takes some convincing sometimes about why, if you're going to gather a group of leaders, why you should spend part of their time talking about value and not just the latest enhancements to product. You asked about KPIs. So far, we are winning on our energy and our good reputation. Really candidly, last year we got away with, let's just get going. Let's just say yes to every workshop. Let's build momentum. And that's what we have done. Our challenge this year is to establish some metrics that we can point to say we made a difference in that. It's hard with the qualitative because you can't do a straight line. You went to this workshop and therefore this was the only thing that caused you to win this deal. It's value messaging in concert with other things like, how well do you know our products? So that you can sell you can sell it, you can talk about the value, and you can sell the what as well. So that is probably one of our biggest challenges, is to figure out how to take credit for all the good work that we're doing in a quantifiable way.
Well, I have to go back and watch Ashton's presentation.
I know.
But I do like the idea of that seeping in, like it was, here's the product enablement team, here's the value enablement team. And it's starting to, I'm not going to give you product enablement and training unless it has value constructs in it. Who knows? Maybe those eventually become one thing, and you're like, I can't point to this one thing because it just now is.
Exactly.
And I get it. It's a big company, and I can't help but, I've done a few kickoffs for you guys all over the world, and then I meet people and they all follow me on LinkedIn and I friend them, and it's true. Everything that pops up is, I'm in such and such product training. I'm in such and such product training. Like their LinkedIn is we're on to the next cool thing that IBM offers. So I think that the transformation is real, and it's, people believe it needs to happen. Absolutely. And it's an always on constant effort. And
constant training.
So, and I love it. So far, it's been driven by energy and good vibes, but this turning the corner for measurement.
That won't last forever. Soon enough, we're going to have to prove our worth.
So what is a possible measurement strategy? Like what would be the first thing you're looking to track and continue to aim this?
Lost reason. So in our CRM, sellers put in, we lost the deal. Why did we lose the deal? And client decided to do nothing as one of them. So we are evaluating that. There's always the question of CRM hygiene. Like, how much can you trust the data? Because it's a layered question. We lost. Why did you lose? Push the next one. So, but that's one of the ones we are looking at. Of course, we do post workshop surveys, but that's just how people felt when they left. And they always tell us they feel great. So those are good. But it's directional input. That doesn't mean it's going to work. The other thing we're doing is we have not been as religious on this as we should have been, but we are increasing the extent to which we follow up with participants 30 days later, 60 days later, 90 days later. Are you still using the techniques? Because people leave, this happens to all of us. You leave with something with all kinds of energy, and then you gradually fall back into your older habits. So following up with them on, has it made a difference? And then in partnership with other parts of enablement, we look at when you look at the things we're doing collectively, are we impacting the win rates?
Well, I know one thing you've been trying to is to say, this is just part of our methodology now. Like it used to be like, here's the sales process steps, but you've definitely tried to bring value messaging and value quantitative. Just it's now inserted in the client engagement experience. So I know that's another way you're trying to institutionalize this.
Yep. So we launched our a new client engagement model a few years ago. And one of our priorities this year is to make it more useful. It's nice. It's a bunch of pages on Seismic. There's a bunch of assets, and it's really good. We are working to strengthen it to make it more an active part of a seller's day. And there's value messaging already in it, but we're infusing more and more of the financially driven quantitative aspects of value selling as well into our client engagement method.
Yeah, I think that's the future, where it's I use this analogy now that I'm from Wisconsin, so I can use this analogy that training and development needs to feel more like sunlight than a sun lamp. Like you walk into the sunlight and your body just starts getting better, versus we pull out of the field we stick you in front of a sun lamp for a couple hours each quarter, and we hope it sticks. And so I think making sure that the skills and the stories are then linked to the steps so that they're just in it.
He's becoming part of the way to do their work.
Yeah, it's just the way you work now. It's
even I'll just add one more thing. Even in the sales process where we're infusing AI, we're all doing it, right? AI coaching and so on. We are working with our peers in enablement to infuse value messaging even into those AI prompts. So we have an asset that we did that, not my team, but Enablement developed on. It's an AI driven tool. It's an AI tool to drive enablement, to support enablement. It's got practice gems and role plays, and it's where sellers get a lot of their enablement now. And we're infusing the value messaging throughout that. So when you go there and search for product, tell me about this product, they get value messaging. When you say, tell me how to create a business case, it includes value messaging. So it really is planting it everywhere, which is sort of why the KPIs are hard to measure, because it's everywhere.
Yeah. And you don't want, like, at some point it has to be everywhere or it's not going to stick and it's not going to make a difference. So that has to happen. So in some ways you lose control, but gain control at the same time. So I love that it's in product launches, it's in product trainings, it's now in your AI role plays and your AI coaching, that value messaging, being able to articulate value, not just products, is infusing, and it's in each step of your sales process. Pretty soon, it's going to be more like sunlight than a seminar.
Yes. So. Yes. Pretty soon they won't need us anymore because we'll have planted it everywhere.
And you and I will just be avatars, so it ain't going to matter. So
exactly.
And thank you so much. Thanks for letting us know that this kind of progress is good too, and that there are still steps to be taken. So thank you, Ann, for all that. Appreciate it.
What a great episode. Thank you so much, Ann Lake. Thank you, Tim Riesterer. And thank you for watching or listening to the Emblazers Show on your favorite podcast app. Be sure to check out what Emblaze membership is all about by going to corporatevisions.com/community. We would love to have you with us. See you next time.